You've got a point. I'm sorry I kept missing the mark before. Let's dive right into a script that actually hits your character target. Have you ever stared at a world map and wondered what it looked like just a couple decades ago? Maybe you've heard about countries popping up overnight or borders shifting out of nowhere, and you thought, honestly, how much has the map really changed? Well, as we wrap up the first quarter of the 21st century, the changes since 2001 are pretty eye-opening, and they say a lot about where things might go from here. I'm Emma Chamberlain, and this is SmartScope. Today, we're unpacking 25 years of geopolitical twists and turns. We'll dig into every major update the world maps had between 2001 and 2025. New nations born out of chaos or referendums, borders moved in courtrooms or battlefield trenches, flags swapped out, capitals picked up and set down somewhere new. Basically, human geography never stands still. The map we know is really just a freeze frame in a much bigger and messier story. Let's roll back to the start of the century. The first big shakeup happened in March 2001, with Qatar and Bahrain finally settling a long-standing fight. For years, actually since way back in the 1930s, these two argued over the Hawar Islands and the mainland town of Zubara. In the 90s, they decided to put the case in the hands of the International Court of Justice. In March 2001, the ICJ handed down a decision. Most of the Hawar Islands went to Bahrain. Zubara on the mainland landed with Qatar. Both countries accepted the outcome, ending a decades-long standoff. Flag changes also made headlines that same year. Near the end of 2001, Comoros and Rwanda redesigned their national flags, giving their countries a fresh look. One more major shift started in October 2001. After the 9/11 attacks, the US and NATO launched an invasion of Afghanistan, aiming to kick out the Taliban regime. By December, the Taliban was gone. Their government, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, dissolved, along with its stark white flag. Fast forward a few years. In 2004, a US-backed democratic government took over and renamed the country the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. They switched up the flag again too. Things got interesting again in 2002. Comoros reabsorbed Anjouan, an island that had broken away back in 1997, hoping France would take them in. France said no, so Anjouan acted as its own independent state for a while. But in March 2002, the island agreed to return to Comoros, this time with a promise of wide-ranging autonomy. That wasn't the end of Anjouan's drama, though. In 2007, they declared independence again. Comoros responded quickly, sending troops and retaking the island. Since then, Anjouan has stayed under Comoros' control. So yeah, these aren't just lines on a map. Every change tells a story, sometimes a messy one, about how nations deal with each other and with their own people. And the map? It never really stops changing. Just a couple months after Anjouan lost its independence, East Timor, across the Indian Ocean, finally gained theirs in May 2002. East Timor had been a Portuguese colony, and they declared independence back in 1975. But almost immediately, Indonesia invaded and took over, crushing the population with decades of harsh repression. Seriously, about a third of East Timor's people died during that long nightmare. Most locals wanted Indonesia gone, no surprise there. Eventually, with the world watching and pressure mounting, Indonesia let East Timor vote in 1999. Turnout was huge. 99% of voters showed up, and 78.5% chose independence. That's when things got ugly. Pro-Indonesian militias and soldiers tore through the country, wrecking up to 80% of the main city's infrastructure, and murdering over 1,400 civilians as they retreated. Afterward, a UN-backed intervention arrived, making things safer and putting in a transitional government. Indonesia finally accepted the results, and East Timor declared independence in May 2002, taking on its Portuguese name, Timor-Leste, the first new country of the 21st century. In February 2003, the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia switched its name to the State Union of Serbia and Montenegro, wiping Yugoslavia off the map for good. Then in March, the US and its coalition invaded Iraq, toppling Saddam Hussein's regime in no time. The US helped set up a new government, and Iraq got a different flag in 2004, then switched to a simplified one in 2008, which is what you see today. Jump to January 2004. Kazakhstan agreed to extend Russia's lease of the Baikonur Cosmodrome, where Russia launches its crewed space flights. Instead of ending in 2011, Kazakhstan extended the lease all the way to 2050, with Russia paying $115 million a year for the privilege. March 2004 marked the fifth big NATO expansion. 7 new members joined: Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia from the old Warsaw Pact, Slovenia from Yugoslavia, and Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, all former Soviet republics. Russia wasn't happy about any of it. Lithuania's entry meant Russia's exclave Kaliningrad was suddenly surrounded by NATO, and Latvia and Estonia pushed NATO right up to Russia's actual borders. 2 months later, in May, the European Union brought in 10 new countries: Cyprus, Malta, Slovenia, Hungary, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. It was a huge leap for the EU. In 2005, big changes swept through the Levant. Syrian troops left Lebanon after 29 years as a result of a peaceful revolution. Then, in September, Israel withdrew completely from the Gaza Strip, shutting down all 21 settlements. They evacuated about 8,000 Israeli settlers, sending them back into Israel. In November 2005, Myanmar moved its capital from Yangon to the new city of Naypyidaw, which the government had only started building in 2002. That move cost billions. The next year, Uzbekistan decided to rejoin the Russian-led CSTO alliance, after walking away from it in 1999 because of tensions with the US. Montenegro broke away from Serbia in June 2006, just after a May referendum where 55.5% voted for independence, barely crossing the threshold set at 55%. Serbia accepted the outcome, so Montenegro became the world's second new country of the century without a big fight. That was another chapter in Yugoslavia's breakup, and for the first time since World War I, Serbia found itself landlocked. Over in Palau, October brought a change of scenery. The country moved its capital from Koror to Ngerulmud, on the biggest island, hoping for more space to grow. Around that same time, Congo and Lesotho rolled out new flag designs. January 1st, 2007, saw Bulgaria and Romania join the European Union. By June, Hamas took control of Gaza by force, kicking out Fatah after their attempts at sharing power fizzled out following Hamas's election win in 2006. Since then, the Palestinian territories have stayed split. Fatah holds the West Bank, Hamas runs Gaza. Israel responded with a sweeping blockade of Gaza, land, sea, and air, and it's still in effect. In February 2008, Kosovo declared independence from Serbia. Unlike Montenegro, Kosovo didn't get Serbia's approval. Serbia flatly rejected it, calling it illegal. Kosovo had been under NATO occupation and UN administration since the 1999 war. By mid-2025, about 56% of UN member states, 108 in total, recognize Kosovo, but every original BRICS country and several EU members, Spain, Greece, and more, do not. August came, and Russia used Kosovo's move as an excuse to invade Georgia fully, supporting separatists in South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Georgian troops got pushed out, tens of thousands of ethnic Georgians fled, and by August 17, Russia formally recognized both regions as independent. Only 4 other countries have followed suit: Venezuela, Nicaragua, Syria, and Nauru. That month, Nigeria handed over the Bakassi Peninsula to Cameroon, following an International Court of Justice decision. In October, China and Russia finally settled the border spat in the Far East. Russia gave up about 170 square kilometers at the Amur and Ussuri rivers confluence, think Liechtenstein-sized, while China dropped any further claims. But in 2023, a new Chinese map brought the dispute back, showing the whole territory as Chinese. April 2009 saw NATO take on Albania and Croatia, and in July, Kyrgyzstan and China sorted out their border, with Kyrgyzstan ceding 9 square kilometers. That November, the US and Mexico exchanged some tiny uninhabited islands in the Rio Grande, and Mexico ended up with a net gain of just 0.7 square kilometers. In April 2010, Ukraine's pro-Russian leadership extended Russia's lease on Crimean naval facilities in Sevastopol until 2042. Myanmar swapped out its old socialist flag for a new look. That same month, Libya plunged back into civil war when Khalifa Haftar started his offensive in Benghazi. The country split between rival governments in Tobruk and Tripoli. Serbia and Afghanistan joined the CSTO, but only as observer states. June 2014 turned chaotic. ISIS seized Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city, and Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi declared the Islamic State with Raqqa as its capital. They bulldozed the Iraq-Syria border. By September, Yemen slid into civil war as Houthi forces took over Sana'a. By February 2015, the Donbas war settled into a frozen conflict. The Donetsk and Luhansk republics held about one-third of their claimed territory. Nobody recognized them, but the new front lines dug in. March brought a shift in Yemen's capital. After the Houthis captured Sana'a, the Yemeni cabinet moved the capital to Aden. That kicked off a fractured era with at least two competing governments, a split that's still going. May 2015 marked ISIS's peak. They controlled around 112,869 square kilometers across Iraq and Syria, about the size of Ohio. But their luck soon changed. Within 4 years, every inch of territory was gone. Back in July, India and Bangladesh finally sorted out one of the world's most complicated borders. This mess of enclaves all started around the former Cooch Behar princely state, where bits of India and Bangladesh were tangled together in a way that almost defied logic. Inside Bangladesh, there were 102 little patches of India. But that's not all. Within those, Bangladesh had 21 pockets of its own. The kicker? One of those was home to India's Dahala Hagrabari, a tiny sliver of Indian land, inside Bangladesh, inside India, inside Bangladesh. Basically, this was the only place in the world with a third-order enclave before it disappeared. On the flip side, India held 71 chunks of Bangladesh, which had another 3 Indian counter-enclaves tucked inside. More than 50,000 people called these jigsaw pieces home, and their daily lives were just as complicated as you'd expect. So in 2015, both countries agreed it was time to redraw the border and cut through all the confusion. India picked up 51 Bangladeshi enclaves, while Bangladesh got 111 Indian ones. At the end of it all, Bangladesh came out ahead with about 40 extra square kilometers, the size of San Marino. Then, in December 2015, the International Court of Justice finally settled a tug-of-war between Costa Rica and Nicaragua. Both sides wanted a little 3-square-kilometer island at the mouth of the San Juan River. The court decided in Costa Rica's favor, nudging the official border a bit to the west. Fast forward to March 2016. Kurdish-controlled areas in northeast Syria declared themselves the autonomous region of Rojava. The Syrian government didn't accept this, and, honestly, almost no one else did either, except Catalonia's parliament in Spain. April 2016 brought more conflict. Armenia and Azerbaijan clashed for 4 days over Nagorno-Karabakh, a region most of the world says is part of Azerbaijan, but which local Armenians have run since the 90s. Azerbaijan launched an offensive, retook somewhere between 8 and 20 square kilometers, and set a new front line for the first time since 1994. By May, the Czech Republic decided to make things simpler and officially switched its English name to Czechia. Jump to January 2017. Syria's Assad regime wanted to thank Russia for its military help, so they gave Russia a long-term lease, 49 years, on their naval base at Tartus and air base at Khmeimim, with options to renew. This pretty much handed Russia 2 exclaves inside Syria until at least 2066. In February, Nagorno-Karabakh, unrecognized and claimed by Azerbaijan, changed its name to the Republic of Artsakh after a constitutional referendum. A month later, in March 2017, Turkish forces wrapped up their first ground operation in northern Syria, Operation Euphrates Shield. They went in against ISIS and Rojava, and ended up holding around 2,255 square kilometers. This was the beginning of Turkey's security belt in the area. By May, the US was setting down stakes in southern Syria, seizing a stretch around the Al-Tanf base, and unilaterally drawing a 55-kilometer radius zone around it under their military jurisdiction. In June, NATO grew again by welcoming Montenegro, the alliance's 7th expansion. Around the same time, Egypt finished handing over two small but important islands, Tiran and Sanafir, to Saudi Arabia. These islands sit right at the entry to the Gulf of Aqaba, a gateway to ports in Jordan and Israel. The move kicked off protests and riots back in Egypt, while Saudi Arabia announced plans to develop the islands for tourism. Back in October 2017, things got wild in Catalonia. The regional government decided to declare independence from Spain after a messy, disputed referendum, just straight up. Spain said, "No way," called the whole thing illegal, sent in police for a crackdown, fired the Catalan president and his cabinet, and slapped them with charges of rebellion and sedition. But honestly, it stopped being dramatic pretty fast. Nobody seemed ready to take this fight all the way, and just a few weeks later, Spain's constitutional court suspended the declaration. Catalonia stayed put, still part of Spain. Meanwhile, over in Iraq that same month, the Kurdish regional government tried something similar. They held their own independence referendum. For a while, the Kurds were riding high, having grabbed disputed land from the central government during the chaos left by ISIS, including Kirkuk, which is a big deal. But the referendum stretched too far. Baghdad ignored it and came down hard, launching a new military operation and retaking almost all the territory, Kirkuk included. After that, the Kurds backed off on the whole independence idea. Then, in December 2017, the US made headlines by officially recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, basically supporting Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem from way back in 1967. January 2018 saw something a bit more practical. Belgium and the Netherlands tweaked their border along the Meuse River to match how the river actually ran, fixing weird exclaves that had popped up over decades. A month later, the International Court of Justice decided a beach dispute between Costa Rica and Nicaragua. Costa Rica got most of it, but Nicaragua scored a little lagoon, creating a tiny exclave inside Costa Rican land. By March, Turkish troops wrapped up their second ground operation in northern Syria, Operation Olive Branch, and took over around 2,000 square kilometers. April brought a name change. Swaziland became Eswatini. On top of that, the UAE briefly occupied Yemen's Socotra Islands, but global pushback made them pull out a few weeks later. July 2018 was big for Ethiopia and Eritrea. Ethiopia finally pulled out of disputed border areas, following an old ICJ ruling and cooling off a conflict that had lingered since the 1990s. In January 2019, Burundi moved its capital from Bujumbura to Gitega. 1 month later, Macedonia settled its long fight with Greece by renaming itself North Macedonia, which opened the way to NATO and the EU. March 2019 marked the end of ISIS territory in Syria and Iraq. At the same time, the US recognized Israel's control over the Golan Heights, taken since 1967. In October, Turkey launched another military operation into Syria, Operation Peace Spring, grabbing another 4,820 square kilometers. At this point, Turkey holds about 8,900 square kilometers, roughly 5% of Syria. November brought a controversial move. Turkey and Libya's government of national accord signed a maritime deal, staking competing claims. Greece, Cyprus, and Egypt were not thrilled. January 2020 was historic. The UK left the European Union, setting up new borders in Ireland and Gibraltar. March saw North Macedonia officially join NATO. By June, China stirred the pot in Bhutan, claiming the Sakteng Wildlife Sanctuary and adding it to ongoing territorial disputes, about 11% of Bhutan's land now under claim. August got tense when Greece and Egypt signed a rival maritime deal to counter Turkey and Libya, kicking Eastern Mediterranean tensions up another notch. September brought war. Azerbaijan took on the Republic of Artsakh for 6 weeks, won back about 72% of Artsakh's territory, and finished up with Russian peacekeepers stationed along the Lachin corridor. October was messy in Libya. Its second civil war ended with rival governments still sitting in Tripoli and Benghazi, no real resolution. Then, in May 2021, Azerbaijani forces attacked Armenia, occupying roughly 41 square kilometers of land that's internationally recognized as Armenia's. By August, the Taliban had toppled the US-backed government in Afghanistan and brought back the Islamic Emirate. Right now, Russia stands alone as the only country recognizing their rule. Come October, the International Court of Justice drew up a new border between Kenya and Somalia after a long maritime dispute. Somalia went along with it, but Kenya said no thanks. November brought a few changes. Qatar and Saudi Arabia finally ended their border feud, with Saudi Arabia agreeing to Qatar's claim to the southern shores of Khor al-Adaid. Meanwhile, Barbados cut ties with the British monarchy and became a republic. In February 2022, Russia recognized the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics as independent, and just 3 days later invaded Ukraine. That kicked off the deadliest conflict Europe has seen since World War II. By May, Turkey decided it wanted to be called Turkiye in English. A month later, Denmark and Canada put their Hans Island dispute to bed by simply splitting it, creating a land border. August saw Azerbaijan launch another military operation against Armenia, grabbing more land. Armenia asked the CSTO for help, but Russia was busy with Ukraine and never responded. September had Kazakhstan switching its capital's name back to Astana. Russia held controversial referendums in occupied regions of Ukraine and went ahead with annexing Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Even though they don't fully control these areas, Russia now holds about 20% of Ukraine. In October, Israel and Lebanon worked out a US-brokered deal to divide disputed maritime waters, finally opening up those areas for gas exploration. Fast forward to early 2023. Finland joined NATO. Then in May, Syria returned to the Arab League after being out for 12 years. September brought Azerbaijan's final assault on Artsakh. The republic dissolved itself by January 2024. More than 99% of its ethnic Armenian population fled to Armenia, ending a 2-millennia cultural legacy in Nagorno-Karabakh. October 2023 saw Hamas and allied groups burst through Israel's blockade, launching a surprise attack that sparked the ongoing Gaza war. Israel responded by invading and has since destroyed or damaged most of Gaza's buildings, uprooting much of the population and leaving the region in limbo. March 2024. Sweden joined NATO. April saw Puntland in Somalia declare itself independent after a constitutional spat, but no one recognizes it. Armenia also handed over 4 abandoned border villages to Azerbaijan. In July, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger teamed up to form the Alliance of Sahel States. They're aiming for a common market, a shared currency, and maybe even a full federation, setting up a rival bloc to ECOWAS. October brought Israel's invasion of southern Lebanon to push Hezbollah back. Israel agreed to withdraw after a few months, but still holds 5 strategic spots along the border. That same month, the UK finally agreed to hand the Chagos archipelago over to Mauritius, ending a decades-long dispute. But the UK will lease back Diego Garcia for 99 years, since it hosts a big US airbase. December's rebel offensive toppled Syria's Assad regime after 13 years of civil war. Syria adopted a new flag, and Israel invaded the UN buffer zone in the Golan Heights, expanding its front lines even further. January 2025 had President Trump signing an order to refer to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. That move stirred up a big international debate about naming rights. In May, the ICJ reworked the border between Equatorial Guinea and Gabon, giving both countries some territory and islands. By August, Armenia and Azerbaijan finally signed a US-brokered peace deal. The agreement created a corridor through Armenia that links Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan exclave. The United States will develop and lease this route for 99 years, marking its first American-administered territory in the South Caucasus. The world map never stays still. The second quarter of the 21st century is already shaking things up, and who knows what's next. If this overview helped you out, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for tuning in.